So today, got my carburetor off. Gonna do a little maintenance. Been letting known by a couple people that if people have been running faster than what they normally do, things have been acting a little weird. Guess what? All this ash could be in there. So I'm gonna tear the carburetor apart a little bit, do some cleanup and stuff. Lots of different ways ash can get in the carburetor. We've had a ton of ash in the air in the last little while. So that's what I'm going to do. If you guys aren't familiar with these old Hollies and stuff, this is actually a pretty new Holly-based quick fuel. If you pull out either bottom screw on the float bowl, it'll actually drain all the fuel out of the floats. So we'll do that in a second here. First thing we're going to do, pull a fuel log off so it's not in the way. And then from there, we're going to pull the fuel bowls off, look inside, do a little bit of cleaning up. Got a little cleaning to do in here anyways. You can see this stuff should be nice and shiny under there. Carb's had a couple of little backfires. They fixed that. It was a timing issue down at the bottom end. So we're going to tear this apart, clean it up, make it look like new again, and put it all back together and get ready to race for this weekend. Alright, so we got the float bowls off. And everything so far looking pretty clean. Did find a little bit of metal up in my fuel line, which is kind of weird, but keep an eye on stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to tell which one's the front and which one's the back on these. The back one has jet extensions for drag racing. When you launch hard and the fuel wants to slosh to the back of the float bowl, these jet extensions keep them submersed well into the fuel. And the corresponding float bowl, the float, is actually notched out for those jet extensions. So it's pretty easy to match everything up like that on carburetors like this. Some carburetors won't have the extensions, but just keep an eye out for keeping everything. If you've got something like that, make sure it's on the back. If they're exactly the same, then keep an eye on your jet sizes and whether you have a power valve in there. This one, the power valve generally goes right in here. Looks like a little spring activated device. Because I'm a drag racing only application, I have no power valves. Power valve would be actually on the primary side, which would be on this side, which again I have deleted. So keep an eye out for that, and keep an eye on your jet sizes. We'll let you know which one's front and which one's rear. Power valve and lower jet numbers will be on the front. No power valve and high jet numbers or jet extensions will be on the rear. Alright, so I've got the carburetor torn down to its main components. The main body, the base plate, the metering blocks, and the float bowls. And the only thing I'm actually seeing in my carburetor, there's a tiny bit of ash in it, which will definitely get cleaned up. But a lot of it's just soot from the backfires and stuff. Like I mentioned before, I had a timing issue that I fixed. Too much timing at too low of RPM. It was backfiring through the carb on startup. So, lots of soot from that. But not seeing any ash or anything in my carburetor, which is a good thing. Another good thing, if you buy a decent carburetor to start with, they come with all these non-stick gaskets and stuff, which are awesome because you can put your carburetor and take it apart several times before you actually need to replace them. I've had these float bowls off at least a dozen times, jetting and changing things and stuff like that. So just to be sure though, because you do get little stuff like this right here on the boosters, I will clean everything up. I will spray brake clean and carb clean through all my ports and passages. Make sure there's nothing in there. I don't see anything at this moment, so that's a good thing. And clean it all up, put it all back together. Be careful what you're doing when you got a carburetor apart. Like I said, I wanted to do this for maintenance. Other guys have found a whole pile of stuff inside their carburetors, bunch of ash and stuff. I guess I'm a little on the lucky side. Mine, I don't see hardly anything. So one of the other guys I was talking to, his motor went lean. He just about wrecked it because it was going so lean. My carburetor is good. I will pull out a spark plug later and check that out. And just to make sure everything's good that way too. Pull a couple of the plugs out, look at them. But I think all in all we're good. I can do a little bit of cleaning and put this all back together. Okay. Alright, so putting things back together here, a little bit of stuff you got to watch out for. One, when you're putting things together, make sure you got your gaskets in place, everything placed properly, set it down. All that kind of stuff. A little tricky doing this one-handed. Okay, when you're putting your float bowl on, especially when you're in the car, you have to watch out for this. Make sure this arm has its lever on your accelerator pump cam there, and this goes down underneath that bolt head. I've accidentally forgot that a couple of times, so I just figured I'd let you guys know about that. Grab your bolts, start them all by hand to get everything all lined up. Little wiggle, puts everything right in place. Alright, put those all in, and then I will have a complete carburetor. I've got everything back together again. It all went together fairly smooth. It's pretty much the only real thing to watch out for when you're putting this stuff back together. Obviously make sure everything's clean, dry, you didn't get any dirt or debris in there when you're putting it back together. But yeah, especially when you're in the car, and especially on the back float bowl, this is super easy to miss. So just something to watch out for. Make sure you get that lined up before you put everything back together. And then tighten everything up. And basically ready to put it back on the car.